As countries scramble to respond to Trump's tariffs, could India be the first country to strike a deal with Trump before his July deadline? Watch this.
India's coming along great. I think we'll have a deal with India. The Prime Minister, as you know, was here 3 weeks ago, and they want to make a deal. We'll see what happens.
Would this reflect a new partnership between India and the United States as Trump refocuses on Asia? And will the future of the 21st century be determined on the strength of the United States and India partnership, as Vice President JD Vance has said? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Yin Khvat. Joining us today are Kristy Hsu, Chung-Hua Institution for Economic Research Taiwan ASEAN Studies Center Director, and Roger Liu, National Sun Yat-sen University International Masters Program in Asia-Pacific Affairs Assistant Professor. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. Just before Trump's first 100 days in office, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made headlines by saying a deal with India, which has a potential 26% U.S. tariff, could be imminent. Watch.
I'm sorry, did you have a comment on whether something could happen this week or next week? For a deal. So, you said yesterday.
Again, I think that we are very close on India.
During his visit, JD Vance called India and the U.S., quote, very much a win-win partnership. The future of the 21st century is going to be determined by the strength of the U.S. and India partnership. Kristy, let me come to you first. So why India as Trump's first breakthrough deal?
I think there are several reasons behind that. First of all, probably people still remember that back in Trump 1, India at that time has negotiated what we call the mini trade pact with the U.S., though it didn't end up to be a completed trade agreement. But at that time, Trump administration, together with Modi administration, both have exchanged a lot on bilateral trade issues. So that could be a very important basis for that. And the second thing is, I think after Trump announced this reciprocal tariff on April 2nd, it's already 1 month, and Trump is definitely needs someone to conclude a trade deal with the U.S. so that he can demonstrate to other countries, especially to China, that his strategy is successful in terms of attracting and forcing countries, trading partners to negotiate something with the U.S. And why India? Because if you compare all these countries with higher reciprocal tariff rates, India actually has a much simpler trade relations with the U.S. First of all, its trade surplus from the U.S. side is only about 40 billion U.S. dollars, much lower than, for example, Vietnam, which is 120 billion U.S. dollars. And the second thing, which is most important, is in India, there's no such issues as the transshipment from Chinese. And also there's no flooding of Chinese investment into India, trying to take advantage or trying to have a free rider of Indians' access to U.S. markets.
Roger, let's go back to the quote from JD Vance. The future of the 21st century is going to be determined by the strength of the partnership between the U.S. and India. So how do we compare how the Trump administration sees its partnership with India versus, for example, an older ally like Canada and the EU?
Well, I think India plays a very important and key role in the emerging alliance relationship for the U.S., especially in the Indian-Pacific region. Actually, the reason why Indian-Pacific region got its name instead of Asia-Pacific region, actually it's because of India. And in Quad, India plays a very important role as well. So I think this is the new century, and the United States has been trying to leverage on India's role into countering China and to counterweight China in this area. So they want to improve the relationship through multiple aspects. Of course, bilateral trade is a very important one. So I think this is actually why we can see the fundamental change of the attitude towards India from Washington, D.C. this time.
And does it reflect changing foreign policy? And we were talking about, Canada, EU, being treated, it appears, not like strong allies in terms of the trade, at any rate, and praise lavished on India.
There's a large potential of India to improve the relationship with the U.S. If you check carefully, for the past few years, the substantial bilateral relationship between Washington, D.C. and New Delhi has been improved a lot since 2015, including the two statements being announced between the two leaders of the country, starting from 2023, that these two countries are going to improve their collaboration on emerging technologies, including the defense, including semiconductor, including net zero technologies, and all kinds of that. And of course, that's because, well, India is expected by the U.S. to play a key role in the Indo-Pacific region, especially India is long viewed as a missing link and a swing state in the Indo-Pacific structure. So by reinforcing India's power, actually, U.S. is helping itself as well.
Kristy, let's talk about, so that actually covered off the Biden administration as well, but let's focus in on Trump administration. So Usha Vance is the U.S.'s first Indian-American second lady. Now, Vance, in his speech when he was in India, said there'll no longer be any condescension from Washington towards India. Now, let's compare that with Vance's comments about Chinese peasants. What should we draw from these comparisons?
I think Vance's remarks are very much well said and very diplomatic when he addressed Indian audience and Indian government. I think it's a must that he has to do that, and which also very much make Modi government very happy, because if you remember that Modi and also together with Xi Jinping are probably the only two leaders from major countries that deal with Trump 1 and now still deal with Trump in his second term. And therefore, Trump and Modi always have this personal friendship. India in the past years still very much dependent on, for example, Russian oil and also Russian military system. And therefore, Trump in this term will have to expand not only for trade, economy, technology, but also for military relations with India. So having heard what the Vice President said, I think he is addressing Indians one of the most important partner under Trump's second term, because China definitely is gone. And if you consider all these other major partners, U.S. still have a lot of problem with his neighbors, and probably he will consider India right now one of the most strategically important partners.
Apple CEO Tim Cook has spoken out for the first time on the impact of tariffs, saying that if President Trump insists on raising them, Apple's costs this quarter will surge by $900 million. In response, the company plans to source tens of millions of chips from TSMC's U.S. facility and relocate all production lines for models sold in the U.S. to India. Roger, so isn't this precisely what Trump wants Apple to do?
Well, I don't think so, because, well, of course, Donald Trump would prefer to backshoring by, emigrate all the assembly lines back to the U.S. But for the U.S. currently actually relocating the supply chains to India will be much better because of the U.S.-China trade war and trade conflict. So I think this reflects the fundamental change of the political economic situation between especially U.S. and China, that they are entering a conflictual and confrontational stances rather than what people has expected, that things will be going back to the normal, that the U.S. and China will be working together. So this is like the hedging options that Apple will take.
Right. And what would this mean if we just look at that iPhone business, Kristy, from Apple? What does that mean for India's economy?
I think, of course, India welcomes this development because India in the past years trying to take advantage of this, the so-called trend of relocation of supply chain away from China to other countries. However, I think according to the data, India has not benefited very much from this relocation, because very much a lion's share of this relocation actually went to Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, including Thailand, also probably Malaysia. So India definitely wants to take advantage of Trump's 2.0. And having said that, I think even Apple company understand that sooner or later they are going to be imposed with whatever rate Trump is going to have, and therefore Cook right now respond that he is going to relocate at least 60% of the supply chain to India. I think that is a very much welcome message to India as well as to U.S. government. However, I think we still need to take a close look at how India is going to implement that kind of message because tariff is definitely not the only factor for suppliers for iPhone to consider.
However, India is already benefiting from differential, the tariff differential with China, and the tariffs haven't even been agreed yet. They're not even in place yet, and you have companies like Apple. What other industries or manufacturers do you think could also be considering this kind of move? I mean, perhaps Nike, they've requested that footwear is exempt from the U.S. tariffs?
Well, I think that can be a complicated question. Well, of course, India will definitely, the different supply chains of India will definitely benefit from moving away from China. If we focus only on the ICT sector, actually, India now still importing 50% of its components from China, including Hong Kong. Last year is 180 million. So if the whole Apple supply chain has been, or along with others, are forced to relocate to India, actually the U.S. will have the right to ask India to get rid of the made in China components. That actually will force India's domestic supply chain to grow. However, that will be hard because there will be a lot of obstacles that India has to overcome. But I think in the long term, that will force India to attain its making India and self-reliant India's goal faster than they have expected.
Kristy, let's compare India-U.S. talks with U.S.-China talks. Now, China says Washington must drop all tariffs before any negotiation. So Beijing obviously adopted a tough guy approach. Was it right to do that?
I think it's not just a trade issue or economic issue. It's right now a political issue. If you consider what China's response this time and also response earlier last time, it's equally strong, right? But last time, back in Trump 1, China has a much stronger economy and faster, a higher economic growth rate. And also China at that time was still enjoying its role as the world factory. But right now, several years later, China is facing a lot of challenges, including the economic slowdown, and also a lot of domestic economic issues. And also China's export to international market are faced with a lot of challenges. So it is acting strong. But I think China is considering this a very important step for its trying to get a leadership in the world. For example, China is demonstrating to the world that China still abides by, for example, multilateral trade order and still abide by this rule-based order vis-a-vis Trump's unilateral approach. So I think China has different background for being strong to Trump, including domestic politics. And also trying to show and demonstrate its international leadership in terms of supporting international trade order and also multilateralism.
Roger, do you want to comment on that, on China's approach?
Well, I think China tries to show the world that it is a responsible world power that protects what is called the liberal international order, rather than the United States, who have been claiming this but doing otherwise. And we should notice this time that recently it just happened that the China's ambassador to India actually has sent out good signals to the Indian side, saying that we are not forcing you to do anything trade-wise. So we are not forcing any regulations upon you. So we are the promoter of liberal trade. So I think just like I would like to echo what Kristy has said, that China, when China is doing the trade negotiations, it tries to show to the world other gestures larger than trade itself. It also wants to show the world that it is a stabilizer of the system as well.
The Trump administration is pushing India to open the world's third largest automotive market behind China and the US to US vehicles. 4.3 million units were sold in 2024. However, Indian tariffs can be as high as 110%. In its trade talks with Washington, reports say New Delhi is preparing to propose a forward most favored nation clause to accelerate negotiation process. The clause means that India will apply to the US any lower tariff agreement reached with other countries. So, Roger, why would India make such a blanket and such a rare concession to the United States?
Well, of course, this is a good gesture, but I doubt that, U.S. can enter the Indian automobile market as easy as they thought, because it happened before, several years before actually Ford has, they entered the Indian market, but they withdraw in the year of 2021 because of no benefits they can get from the Indian market. Now, India, there are several different things, characteristics that India's automobile market has. First is that small cars are preferred compared with big cars. And secondly, there are original players who have occupied the market for a long time. For example, Maruti Suzuki has been there since 1970. And Hyundai and other smaller car makers actually are, better players than Ford, who is good at making big cars. And the car actually is controlled by the big conglomerates in India, like Tata, like Mahindra, like Hero Group. Actually, these are the supporters of Modi, and they are control not only automobile, but many aspects in trade in India. So if you want them to open up the market, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm. Kristy,
yes,
you want to jump in?
I think the key answer is about Tesla. Tesla in the past year has tried to negotiate a good deal with Indian government. However, Indians still have more than 100% tariff for imported electric vehicles, which Tesla is thinking that Indian can be one of the largest market. And also, India has this investment that you need to have presence so that you can sell your cars here. So that kind of negotiations have failed, and which make Tesla right now still excluded from the market. Right now, we have Tata, we have Mahindra, and also BYD from China begins to enter the market. I think these issues about this open up its automobile market actually refers to this an EV market, and with Tesla right now is aiming India, and therefore I think India somehow has to respond to the U.S. request for that.
So Roger, I mean, how low would they need to go in order for it to be profitable?
Well, what India wants is technology transfer. So that's just like the early phase of China. So they have to reach agreement that Tesla agrees to transfer some kind of at least part of the technology to enable India to attain its self-reliant Indian goal. And India is making its own EV as well. So apparently the domestic enterprises won't like to be threatened by Tesla.
Okay, and Kristy, let's talk about forward most favored nation status. So, from the Indian side, this is meant to, accelerate the trade talks. How will the U.S. see this? Will this be a deal clincher for them?
Of course, from a very trade protectionist India, this can be a very, very friendly and very, very active gesture. India promised to provide forward most favored nation treatment, meaning that in the future, when if India reaches any free trade agreement with any other country, it will have U.S. imports automatically applied to this most favored nation treatment. But the question is whether India is going to have any potential free trade agreement. If you look at this, then EU, the case of European Union, I just checked the time, and EU began to negotiate a free trade agreement with India back in 2007, and they paused the negotiation and they relaunched the negotiation for 2 times. But right now, 20 years have passed, and still there is a long way from them to reaching the full consensus.
Right. Okay. Let's go into the last question. The Royal Bank of India predicts India's economy will expand 6.5% this year, making it the fastest growing major economy in the world despite the rise in global uncertainties. Further, the rupee has strengthened to a 5-month high, boosted by optimism over a potential trade deal between India and the US, renewed foreign investment in local shares, and a weaker dollar. India enjoys strong domestic demand and relatively lower dependence on exports, with India's share of global exports at just 2%. Roger, so why is it that India is forecast to be the fastest growing economy? That's going by their own bank, the RBI. What are the contributing factors to this?
Well, India has been starting low, so it had been keeping high rate of growth for the past few years. Especially India has a potential large market inside. Just like you have mentioned, India has been like an autarkic kind of economy compared with China's export-oriented ones. So there are a lot of potentials for them to grow, to develop, to industrialize, especially if you consider the fact that India actually is an under-industrialized country. So with this in mind, actually, India has been growing fast. So I think this is why the Central Bank of India actually has the optimistic forecast for the future.
And has it, ironically, the fact that it has got that relative detachment because it doesn't rely so much on exports, has that softened the blow that has been felt by other economies, and therefore placing it in a better position?
Well, sort of. You can say that, but but India has been country that has been remaining equilibrium within itself, which means that India has a market. It has a large market, has a large potential market that may seem lucrative for the outside investors. For example, the U.S. may like to transfer its soybeans and other agricultural produces back into India when China says no to it because of the trade the tariff war. However, agricultural sector is also politically sensitive in India as well. So it's highly protected. So it will not be easy for U.S. agricultural producers to enter the Indian market as well. And that has actually become a difficult point for two sides to talk about.
Right. And Kristy, finally, help us to understand the difference between these two economies, India and China. China, we know, has an over-reliance on exports. So how does that place India perhaps more competitively long-term? What's the geostrategic impact on the Indian economy versus Chinese economy?
I think most people have the impression that China is a very much export-reliant country. But if you look at the fact, you look at this GDP structure and the portion of export to this country's GDP, China is not any more reliant on export than India. I mean, though China exports 10 times of the volume than India does. Having said that, I think India trying to catch up, and in the past 5-6 years, India trying to. The most important goal for India is, for example, its look east. Strategy actually is trying to learn from Southeast Asian countries and also East Asian countries to develop its export-oriented sector so as to increase more jobs at home and also trying to bring more foreign reserve, because India was, in any case, more services and also agriculture based in the country. Therefore, they do want to expand its industry and also its export-oriented sector. So having said this, I think an Indian find it still extremely difficult trying to increase its role in terms of global supply chain. And therefore, the government has been adopting a lot of policies and trying to take this advantage of, for example, talking with the U.S. and also talking with the U.S. and also enhancing its relation with Southeast Asian countries so as to make it more export-oriented. But I think it's getting improved a lot, because 5-6 years ago, you would never have imagined that Apple supply chain would come to India. And right now, India is exporting iPhone, exporting a laptop computer, and also other things. So it's making progress.
Okay, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much, Kristy Hsu and Roger Liu, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.